In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Do-do-do, email, everything feels alright.
On the creative side, we're really diving into persona work, understanding who our audience segments are. Meta's going like video first. I feel like everyone knows it, especially with AI making static ads really easy to like pump out, where it's just not interesting anymore. How do you still get a message to your audience when you yourself are uncertain about what your next steps are when it comes to like price increases? Some brands are...
There are 3 milestones in someone's life where they consider changing brands. Outside of those times, it is an uphill battle. And here we are. This may be one of those times. It's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilothouse email and customer retention team. If you want the sweet nectar of low-cost revenue in your digital ecosystem, follow us on your favorite podcast app today. This time we have as a guest, Abby Kohler. She's actually right in the middle of moving between media buyer to account strategist at Pilothouse. So she's actually coming with a really broad background, and we can have an exciting discussion today. I mean, kind of around like, what is retention doing? What is email and retention doing with our clients? But then also tying in like, how does that work with our ads channels? We've been talking a lot lately on the pod about how email interacts with different stages of the funnel. And this just seemed like a great way to really broaden the discussion on that. So hello, Abby, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
First, before we get into anything else, can you share with us the path that brought you to Pilothouse and our kind of as an account strategist now, and how you see yourself carrying that role and improving Pilothouse?
Yeah, that's a interesting question. I owned my own consignment business back in Alberta, so I'm in Canada. And I fell in love with like building an organic audience and actually growing like my page through Instagram and other channels there. And it was during COVID, so I was laid off like from my retail job and I was in university, and I started that with my best friend, and we actually grew it up to be like a COVID success story on global news. And then we sold it because it just was a bit of a passion project there. But I think that's where I fell in love with marketing, because he handled all the finances and then I handled all of like the customer service and like how we displayed the product and selling it through social media. Pilothouse loves I feel like we always say we love an entrepreneur mindset. And honestly, without a marketing degree or much experience beyond that, that's why they hired me. Been with Pilothouse for 3 years as a hybrid role. So I'm a media buyer and a content manager. So I help with the ad ideation for Meta and TikTok, but I also lead media buying, and stepping into account strategy. I'll be overseeing omni-channel strategy across clients and just looking at how the channels can work together and be more efficient with their ad spend.
Yeah, how they can be greater than the sum of their parts, right? I thought I had 3 things here. And actually, I had a podcast recorded. I had to drop the podcast because everything's changing day to day right now. Maybe we should start by just talking about that, because I'd love to actually hear, and I genuinely want to hear from an account strategist how my team is working with other teams and how our service is working with other services. Because we don't get enough time, and I don't get enough time to discuss that with like the individual strategists. I'm obviously always talking with channel heads. But before we do that, hey, wow, everything's changing day to day right now. Do you want to just talk for a second about, maybe some interactions you've had with clients as things have changed? I mean, I think we've actually had a tariff pause yesterday. Everything's all over the map. So what's going on with your teams and your clients?
Yesterday, I was on a call with Dave, our CEO, one of our clients, and Grayson, who's our head of e-commerce. And we were chatting through the tariffs and like what our action plan was going to be for them. I feel like we've positioned things really well with like 5 areas of opportunity that we've been chatting through with clients and just making sure that we can be as efficient as possible. And mid-call, the tariffs were lifted for them. So we were like, what is going on? And then it was just kind of like this pause where we were like, do we still talk about this or do we just move on? I don't know. But yeah, pretty much I've been booking a meeting with all of my accounts this week and just making sure we're dialed when it comes to knowing where their products are manufactured, knowing how it's going to impact like their efficiency, because efficiency is a big thing on my side when looking at Meta. If they have to have a tariff that's over 100% from China and they have to deal with that and they can't use a different country for manufacturing, then we just need to be twice as efficient, essentially. So our immediate action plan was just, is there spend that we can cut that isn't instantly providing that returning revenue in a situation like this where brands have to be extra sensitive? And then this is what I'm excited to talk about, but just what can we do on the post-click side and on the email side to help us along the way? So if we're spending into retargeting on Meta, do we want to decrease that spend, make sure we're filling the funnel, but also sync up with our retention team and make sure our flows are dialed? Because if they aren't and we're going to keep spending into that, then I feel like you've said it before, but it's like a leaky bucket where that revenue just falls through the cracks and it's wasted ad dollars. So it's been interesting because even though my focus is primarily Meta right now, it's been my first question is just like, are your flows dialed? Because why would we spend into something where people could fall through the cracks?
Yeah, very good. So we're definitely going to pull on that thread. Let me just tie this into some of the ways that I've been speaking with my audience about it, so that everybody can kind of contextualize this. And this is what I've noticed at Pilothouse, which I've really found interesting. So my background was bigger brands, and so there was just a whole lot of like big reach, pushing video through all kinds of different stuff, which Pilothouse does. But what we do that really, really well, better than I've seen anywhere, is actually have the base layer, the kind of the algo layer, where someone's ready to purchase because it's the right time of day and they're on their phone and the algorithm just knows, hey, they're ready to buy, and just pew 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 snipes them off, right? So does it make sense then that, okay, what we're going to do is maybe for some clients, reach a bit less, do a little bit of less of that more awareness stuff, really work on that algo stuff where we're just picking people off, which is super spend efficient, and take a little bit of that money and maybe, hey, do a flow build or kind of, just really shore up your email. And so, kind of same, overall that would be a bit less spend, but if it's done right, same revenue. Is that what you're saying there?
Yeah, exactly. So I just want my brands to be efficient. Like managing the budgets and like being a part of like pumping spend into what's working and what isn't, it feels gut wrenching when you see like you're pushing so much spend into top of funnel. And then you see, this is an example that you and I faced recently, but like their add to cart abandon flow get triggered within a 5-minute timeline. And then you're just like, that is just such a waste because
yeah, totally. They haven't even had a chance to purchase.
Exactly. Yeah. They're mid-checkout and now they're getting hit with that email. Klaviyo is attributing that revenue. You could expand that window to, I think we're now A/B testing it on an account to 20 minutes and we're seeing better performance after a few months of doing that A/B test. So those are the questions that I'm like putting back to the brand and just making sure, because I can do my work on being efficient on ad spend, but I think it's kind of like an all hands on deck moment where do they have a conversion rate problem? Do they have an email flow problem? And like what quick changes can we do just to make sure that we're super dialed in the next few weeks when efficiency really matters?
I've got something kind of interesting here, which is like, what are the things that retention does? And maybe we can do a speed round and you can talk about, in those kinds of different things, what your experience is with an email team and how you use those in your role as an account strategist.
I have a few that I've thought of.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it,
we can,
please.
We can start with like campaign messaging and just like the feedback loop between two channels. So pretty much what I do on my side is I book like an internal with different teams. And so we'll have like Google, Meta, TikTok, and retention. And retention comes to the call with their strongest performing campaigns that month. And it is a really good place for ad ideation on our side. So if, for example, they're like, this comparison where we show not like a direct competitor, but like a different style for making a cup of coffee cranked on the email side, then we can now talk with like our content managers on the Facebook side of things and say, how can we pull that messaging into our warm audiences that we're trying to convert through meta ads? And because if it's working on email and it has a pretty strong open rate, click rate, or like conversion rate on it, then we can say, let's try it out on ads and just like apply those learnings there. But then the same thing goes from meta to email. So we were just talking through one of our strategies this week with a brand. And on Meta, we're doing something called product differentiation testing, where we've pretty much made this like map of like all the competitors and tried to be really strategic when it comes to what do we have that they don't have, and how can we put that into bold marketing claims and headlines. So when you're getting hit with like a sneaker brand and you are interested in sneakers, you're going to start getting Facebook ads for like 5 different sneaker companies, and you have to choose between the 5 that you're seeing on your Instagram stories. It's a competitive space. If we are strategic with our headline and make sure our headline says we are the only sneaker brand that is fireproof, for example, it's a dramatic example, we now stand out in comparison to the competition that they're seeing on their algorithm. But it takes that work to understand like how can we position ourselves as a leader in that space, especially when we're like a small fish in a big sea. So our strategy is we'll do that testing at top of funnel on Meta, and we'll pull our winning differentiators out and we'll feed them to email. So email can go deep on like the storytelling of like why we developed this product to have this differentiator, or why this matters in your selection. Especially, it could be really cool if someone's abandoned their cart, for example. And then to take it a step further, we put those differentiators throughout the site where it can help improve conversion rate. So again, if it's like the only fireproof sneaker, if we have badges in the checkout cart that say like easy returns, 100,000 5-star reviews, only fireproof sneaker, I feel like it's that extra nudge of like, this is the best you're getting, and it's okay to spend this much on a pair of sneakers because it'll be worth it, essentially.
So interestingly, when we're in our 4th year now as an email retention team, and Pilothouse is more years than that. Very originally, this was actually a topic that came up quite a bit because, of course, it's cheaper to test with email, right? So you'd want to do a lot of that testing with email, but also on the other side of that, when you build something, let's say you build something into an automation, it's like when you build an automated email, like for an abandonment or something like that, you're actually kind of building a web page for the site, right? You're building an HTML page for that site, and then it's like, okay, we got to go edit this HTML page when things change, and so kind of the right way to do this, there is a right way to do this. It obviously it's wonderful that we've gotten better at it, of course. You would use the campaigns for that, and it can be as easy as the subject line, right? Where you just actually see which subject lines are driving more traffic. Is it the fireproof, or is it the long lasting? I don't know. What proposition you run against fireproof shoes. But also, just for the audience, like this is one of the reasons that you might build your things like your funnel support as HTML emails, right? And HTML, it's trickier to make it look good. It's obviously easier to make a work of art from like Photoshop or Figma look good. But if anybody who's on the pod, if you've watched all my podcast episodes, you've seen me feature Ralph Lauren and how they do it, right? So just keeping in mind that it's cheaper to do email. Email is also a 50-year-old protocol that's tricky. And so finding the right balance to do those tests is great. So wonderful. What else you got for me?
I really like what you said about like how you're essentially building a web page, because we've actually taken top campaigns and rebuilt them in Instapage and then ran them as pre-sale pages. So now if we like, say for example, we figure out fireproof is like our winning angle. We have that in an ad, it's cranking. We knew it worked in an email campaign, that cranked. We turned that email campaign into a pre-sale page. So now there's cohesive messaging from start to finish, really like driving home that story of the angle that we know is working within the account. So it's something we've tested, and it's been also a really quick and easy win for our team just to take like the email during promo periods. So if you guys have tested different promo messaging throughout, we take like the winning subject, we make that like the top banner on the pre-sale. And then we take the messaging and we literally just copy and paste it into Instapage, obviously make a few tweaks, but then it's good to go and to test as one of our sale flyers on the post-click side of things. So that's another example of just like that feedback loop being so important, because I think that's misknowledge if your meta team and your email team just aren't having that constant communication.
Well, that's the whole point of having an account strategist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super, super cool. I mean, look, we always say, if you've been listening to the pod, it's like, we see conversion funnel support, for instance. You're talking about a campaign, but we see conversion funnel support as a page in your website. And I mean, I remember when I built my first web page and I was actually coding it in HTML. And now people actually they just go and they take an image and they slap the image right on that. And that image is the web page too. Even if you're on an HTTP, maybe you got some text areas, and it's so easy to put the text areas in now. So anything, I've got a list here, but honestly, the audience has heard all my crap. So if you've got anything else interesting, I'd love to hear that.
I have more. Honestly, it was just like, what are the conversations we've been having, and like, how can I just put it out there? I'm sure you've talked about this before, but just like capitalizing on different strong segments and building lookalikes on Facebook. The prime example is like Black Friday. We always take Black Friday purchasers because there are those bucket of people that like only purchase within high intent periods. And we just retarget them year over year. The list grows every single year. We can find people who maybe forgot about us like 2 years ago and bring them back into our funnel through Facebook. And then they sign up for email again. And then now they're not stale anymore. And it's a whole like constant loop that we're doing. But then the other thing is like, I always take our really strong performing sales from certain clients, and I build these mega stackers of like lookalike audiences. So we can take our top 5 sales from the year, put all of that information into Meta, and build lookalikes based off of them. So we're finding demographics that match the identity of those that converted during our sales. And then we target those people during upcoming sales, essentially. So you can get really detailed with your targeting there and just really have dialed audiences and test into new things. So you're not so dependent on something like Advantage Plus and the AI algorithm. But sometimes we see those pockets really crank, and especially during a sale when you're trying to like 4x your spend in a couple of days, those are the mechanisms that help you get there. So
so interestingly, like, this is an important point. You've actually, bottom line, you've found that using the Klaviyo list can outperform the algorithm in some cases because it's customers, right? You don't even need the algorithm to figure out, would they be a customer? It is a customer. That kind of thing, correct?
Yeah. Another crazy one, Bree actually recommended. Bree works at Pilothouse on the email team, for people that don't know.
Number one, and she's excellent.
Yeah. But she once told me that she gave one of her clients a list of people who didn't convert through email. So people who opened but didn't convert. And maybe they just needed like that one extra touch point. So instead of hitting them with another email, we hit them with ads, and they saw that really cool return. So during Black Friday, when you're just like, go, 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 and you're thinking like, how can I just hit them as effectively as possible? That's something that we also tried out during that time, but is also just good for any sale now, if it's large enough on your site to definitely give it a go.
Even Jocelyn Cowell, in one meeting, said that she found the suppressed list worked really well. And the interesting thing is the suppressed list, they said, opt out. I don't want these, right? But they signed in at one point. And so if we talk about all the time on the pod, you want to spread the peanut butter evenly across the toast. You don't want any part of the toast without peanut butter right up to the edges. And so that suppressed list is audience. And if you cannot reach them anymore through email, and you try to hit them with SMS, and if not, go to ads, make sure you hit that audience, especially when we talk about things a bit further up the funnel, because mass market advertising is about reaching the maximum number of people, however cost effective, with the message. So to pull on this string and to get it more retention-y, let me just say that this is a problem that I'm currently working on solving within the company. I don't know if you were on that meeting. Maybe you were, when I presented our segmentation model, and we said, hey, let's use the email segmentation model to kind of target within Meta. And one of the difficulties, and this is actually a difficulty this is hard to solve, is email is one, okay, the customer or the customer or the prospect, when did they last come in? When did they come in? Have they purchased? Have they not? So how old is the address and the binary of buyer or seller, buyer or prospect? We actually do prospect, buyer, repeat buyer. So there's that. But then there's also are they engaging with email? And all these things are useful in a way. If you target people who are not engaging with email, you've got a net new audience. If you target people who are engaging with email, then they're into the brand right now. I'm not a buyer. And so I wanted to make sure the buyers had all of those tools to figure it out. And, what do you know when you show up with 12 different segments in a map? The buyers, are like, what is this? What is the email guy bringing us right now, right? And so we are right now we're simplifying that. And I've talked with the audience here about customer base. So your active base, everybody who's purchased in the last 12 months, and splitting that in two. Is it one purchase ever, or have they purchased more than once ever? And targeting the active first-time buyers through Meta to turn them into repeat buyers. And let me ask you, I'm super curious because I'm also working on this right now. Do you think that you would do just as well hitting 12 months versus, oh no, we want to only hit 3 months of recent buyers? And you know what I mean? What kind of list would you want if you wanted to slay on that?
I would want 12 months personally. I think, for me, if I purchase something, especially at a higher AOV within a year, I'd remember that brand and I wouldn't need to be reminded of them or the product that I bought. So a good example is one of our brands. It's a home good brand, but we are working on upsells for their different collections and how can we use our specific past purchaser list and strategically upsell them on different products that we have high confidence in. So it's a bit of a mind map, but we use Lifetime Leaf to look at LTV and just look at our repeat purchase patterns within the account. And so we'll figure out customers that are first time are most likely to convert on X product. They come back within X days or months and they buy this. So now that's a good signal for me on my bottom of funnel past purchaser campaign that we should retarget the people in that collection with product Y. And then we get that list from email essentially. So it becomes it's almost like math where you have to really figure out strategically what products are you putting in for their second purchase, then their third purchase. Will they eventually buy a whole collection? And maybe that messaging starts turning into complete your collection messaging. But Lifetime Leaf's been huge for that. I definitely recommend it to every client onboarding who has a really strong returning customer rate because it also shapes what we put in those emails and those flows. So now if you have a specific collection and you have a flow for that collection, then when you know that it's time for them to make their second purchase, you can use Lifetime Lead data to signal okay, we know they make their second purchase after 30 days. So at the 30-day mark, that person should get hit with a email that says you now need this because statistically we know that they're going to buy that. And it just kind of helps with that hand holding there.
Listen, everybody in the audience, that was dynamite, wasn't it? Oh my God. If you are out there, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers, and you're like, man, I want that, but I do not have the time to figure all that stuff out and implement it, why don't you come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and say you want to speak with me, or if I've got a face for radio and a voice for print. If you want to speak to Abby, you can probably speak to her too. And we can help you set that up, because that was just dynamite. Do you have more? That last thing was dynamite. My audience wants more from you and less from me, I guarantee.
That has been our beast, for this year, for this specific. They're one of our biggest clients at Pilothouse. They have 5 collections, and within those collections, it's a lot of work, different SKUs and understanding, strategically what should be in ads at each stage of the funnel, and then what we should upsell within campaigns. But we're doing something on the creative side where we're really diving into persona work. So understanding who our audience segments are, what they like to see on the algorithm, and how we can be more educational in our content, but also engaging. Meta's going like video first. I feel like everyone knows it, especially with AI making static ads really easy to like pump out, where it's just not interesting anymore. So now we need to be like strategic in thinking what is actually getting someone to like stay on Instagram for 2 hours at a time, and how could we replicate like that video content into our ads so they are essentially happy to see us, right? But a problem we're facing is it's really easy on the Meta side to take a brand and be like, okay, we understand that we have really two strong personas. One is people who like hunting and fishing, and one is people who like hiking and camping. We can't like now go to Klaviyo and be like, let's make two segments, one who likes hunting and fishing, and like we don't know that information. So now we're chatting through what could we put in the pop-up to make sure that like the emails that they get hit with are tailored to their interests. So we were playing around with the idea of, do we like ask like what they're interested in? Is it X or Y? And put that in the pop-up. And I feel like the common question is, that's like an extra barrier to entry. So do we want to do that? Like make it harder to get that person's email? But Brianna was telling me that she ran this for another client. She was saying she saw stronger results doing that recently. And I think it might be a signal to someone's brain that, oh, these emails aren't going to suck. Like I do like hunting and fishing, and I will likely now get hit with a campaign that has to do with hunting and fishing. So it could actually be a little bit of a win there. But what we're doing is now like putting this from like Meta to purchase and email and thinking of all the channels together. On our content creation side of things, we are creating really tailored ads for that specific persona that we know is like cranking. We know it's our target demo, and we're tying it to the product and the brand and the storytelling element there. Then we make a landing page. So we'll use hunting and fishing still. And it's like 5 areas in America where you can go hunting, essentially, right? And throughout this listicle page, you tie in your product and how this product like makes your life easier while you're hunting and fishing. And then they land on the PDP. So they're going closer to checking out. On that PDP, there's a pop-up. Pop-up says like, do you want... It could either be a welcome offer or like a secret offer or like an exclusive lookbook to Gary's like ultimate fishing hacks, right? So something like that. You get the email, you know they're into it, and now we can like work with the retention team and they can be more engaging in their campaigns that they're putting out to make sure their messaging is aligning with the persona that we've unlocked on Meta and at a higher level.
The brand that we're talking about is a brand that could appeal to hiking and camping and hunting and fishing. So, like, are you actually are you running multiple pop-ups based on destination, or are you actually just doing this to say we don't want to market to this group, and we want to market to this group? Are you self-selecting out, or are you bifurcating the whole program?
We're trying to like build up 2 segments, like one for each, and then tailor their campaign experience.
And then also this, specialized browse abandon for, yeah, exactly. Picture of a bear versus picture of a tree, right? Yeah. Look, dynamite. And look, let me close all that off. I think I've prodded you enough for your ideas. The big point here is, and obviously, why I wanted to bring Abby on was to show to what degree our teams are working together. Broadly, this is like a pretty crazy time in DTC and in the economy in general. Lots of people have fragmented teams who are dealing with 3 different agencies. I was unaware of a bunch of the stuff. I'm the head of email customer retention. There is some stuff in there I was completely unaware of. Our teams are so integrated at this point after years of working together that they're doing things fluidly that you're not going to get if you are with multiple agencies. So maybe a time to consolidate. And again, look for my offer that I had to cancel and then remake because of the Donald Trump tariffs. And why not come in and consolidate and get some affordable flow builds while you're at it. Okay, so I have just some interesting stuff. Originally I went to Dave. I was talking to our CEO, and I said, "Yeah, I've got this episode and talking about ultimately what does email and retention do in these, like rubber meets the road. What do you do? You're either going to ramp up, scale down, or change your message. Like really, really broad buckets, right? Like how are you going to act when suddenly you're in this situation of uncertainty or a large change in kind of the economy and the market? Originally, I had said actually one of the options was turn your program into a spam machine. And the CEO said, please do not say that we're going to turn people's email programs into spam machines. So we do not change email programs into spam machines. We, of course, follow all the rules. We're so white hat, it's amazing. And it's true. We are super white hat. We don't need to break rules to drive results because we're the best email and retention team in the Roman character set. Anyway, these are the three things: ramp up, scale down, or remessage. And I think the remessage part is really interesting. And you have worked tons in advertising at Pilothouse. And so this is just, I think, an engaging discussion. So if anybody's been following the news or formerly Twitter or wherever you're kind of everyone's getting their info, a lot of the messaging, right? And I think a lot about advertising as someone who works in marketing, and what messaging is for, what the purpose of it is. I don't know. We won't get too much into that, but the messaging has been pretty extreme, right? And in times like this, psychologically, I think people kind of move inward a bit. Get close to your friends, get close to your family. We don't know what's happening out there. What's going to happen with the economy, what's going to happen with all this stuff. People psychologically move in a bit. Friends, family, home. I was chatting with a brand of ours that does it's an air filter for pets, right? So I know the brand who does an air filter for pets, and we were talking about how we might change their message. And so I've got a couple. I just want to list a couple of thoughts here, but then I'd love to hear what you think about this kind of thing. So their kind of thing, a lot, it's had this like love life with your pet kind of feel, right? Which was very, it's just a nice little message. But to realign it, there's two sides of the same coin. There's this like, we're not selling silver and gold bars, but like, this kind of like protect your family, like look out for your family. People might have actually changed their psychology enough through all this that they're actually thinking more about, thinking about their kids. Change your message a bit to a little protect your family, protect their lungs. I don't know how we're going to word that. I'm not a copywriter. And the other side of that is like, that's a little bit of a negative angle. The positive angle is like, get closer together. And like a picture of someone with their face right in the dog, just sniffing up all that dander. And they don't have to worry because the house, all the air is so fresh in the house that you can kind of enter a period where you're going to be at home with friends and family, all cuddled up. Just kind of two different ways to capitalize on a change in psychology, and retention very much is about the message, the change in psychology as we get people to repurchase over time. So I've got that for you. Does that spark any interesting thoughts?
Yeah, I love like the change in psychology call out. And I think that's something that we're talking to US and Canadian brands about right now. Canadian feels very easy. It's just owned and operated in Canada. People are very patriotic right now in Canada, and any brand that can capitalize on that is capitalizing on it. I'm seeing it like right below the add to cart button.
Yeah.
It's like an extra little
Absolutely.
reminder to shop Canadian. I'm seeing it in grocery stores, like when I'm picking out eggs and milk. So it's pretty crazy right now, just like what's going on in Canada. So how you can pull on their heartstrings, but more in like a patriotic sense. And then for my US clients, we're talking about it's a very uncertain week. And a lot of brands don't want to just go and make a price increase right away, especially because yesterday a lot of the tariffs were lifted. And maybe tomorrow they'll be back, and we don't know. So what do you do in a position like that? How do you still get a message to your audience when you yourself are uncertain about what your next steps are when it comes to like price increases? That's like the huge one that people are concerned about, and what you're going to do. So some brands are actually sending out like a text only email. I feel like that's a common style that does well when it comes from a founder or like a brand, like speaking to everyone on a personal note. And they're saying like, we are like you. So trying to resonate with them and like level set and say, we don't know what's going on right now. There might be a price increase, but if there is, we don't know when. And now's the time to buy, essentially. So like across all of our brands over the weekend, we saw super strong intent because a lot of consumers in the States are really scared that they're going to experience price increases. Like I read a news headline, I don't know if it's real, but it said the Apple iPhone might 5x its price or cost $3,000 now, right? So there's just like that panic buying where it reminds me of like COVID when people were scared they couldn't get toilet paper. So they went and bought like 6 packages of toilet paper.
I had a lot of toilet paper, to be clear. I had so much, and a year later, we were still going through all the toilet paper. I felt so bad.
My mom thought it was an apocalypse. It was actually insane watching what she started. She was like a squirrel hoarding her acorns.
The thing about that, though, is, sorry, I apologize, but I bought toilet paper because I knew everyone else was going to do it. You end up in these situations where, like, the game theory is, well, I better go do this. And that's actually, that ties into what we're discussing here. There's all kinds of ways that when people enter these different uncertain environments, they just behave differently. Sorry, please continue.
But then the other thing is, if you think like these tariffs are going to last and you have inventory here now, do you want to preserve that inventory? Because if you just sell it all out like as quickly as possible or run something like a sale this week, then you're going to have to place an order and then you're going to have to pay those tariffs. So we have brands that are thinking like, how can we map out our inventory in the next 3 to 4 months? And then we also have brands that are thinking, can we capitalize on this high intent period where people are scared that prices will go up? So they're sending out that email saying prices are staying as is for now. We can't promise you that we aren't considering a price increase.
Let me take that one step back because I've been talking to tons of our brands. We've, by the way, audience, we've like spoken with every brand in depth about this, which has been interesting, and we've gained a lot of knowledge about what's going on. And so some people are like, okay, I've got to get defensive, protective, change my advertising, scale back, like we discussed earlier. Whereas some people who are in a really good position, let's say they're all American. You know what I mean? They're in a really good position, manufactured in the U.S., all that kind of stuff. Some people are saying, hey, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to reach, right? To grab share of market. So there's all kinds of ways that people can approach this. Hey, I've got something interesting to just finish on the kind of the re-message thing before we go into my other two. Ramp up and scale down, not turn it into a spam machine. Just a couple of interesting things from past and how I think advertising works. Are you familiar with, this was like a case study in school, Febreze, how the advertising model changed for Febreze? Febreze is something you spray in the air and it makes it smell arguably better. I don't really like Febreze. But look, if the original advertising was, stinky socks. Oh, there's stinky socks over there, like that kind of ad, right? And you spray the Febreze and everyone's happy. You can imagine the advertising, right? Like that was the original Febreze, and it just didn't sell. It didn't sell like it would need to have sold. And I guess the advertiser said, it's not doing as well as it should. And they changed it. And if anybody's listened to recent episodes, we did discuss, I forget it's basically self-centered bias where everybody thinks that they are, for instance, the average driver thinks that they're an above average driver, but the average driver is an average driver. It's just a cognitive bias. Everybody thinks they're right. They changed it and they put the I guess it was like the mom, right? Or the really preppy dressed kind of, woman in the home, whatever, whether or not she was a mom, right? They put her in the room, in a bedroom, and it was the last thing to make the room look perfect. She laid down the sheet and she got it nice and smooth, and the room looked perfect. And then the last thing she does is spray Febreze in the room. And it brought sales up because people who have stinky socks in their house, they don't notice that there's stinky socks. If they noticed or if they cared, they would move the stinky socks. So interestingly, they started selling Febreze to people who don't need Febreze because their houses are already flawless. But it's this looking into seeing themselves. This is what I think is happening psychologically. They see themselves because that was the woman, the conservatively dressed mom, right? In the room and go, hey, that's me. And then seeing the environment going, I knew it. I knew the secret to life and happiness is a perfect home. I knew it because there I am. This is what's happening psychologically, right? And then all they see is the Febreze. And the Febreze, it's not even about the Febreze. It's like, oh, this is this perfect moment where I'm right. And there's just this action happening. And then I associate Febreze with that. Hey, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers. Our episode was so long and amazing and dynamite that Abby had to go to a meeting. She had to leave the pod and go do for a client all the amazing stuff that we just discussed. And I begged, and she agreed to come back and finish off the pod. So let's all thank her for sharing so much of her valuable time with us. We're going to try to just jump back into where we were. It's maybe be a little bit weird. You know what? It's been a weird week. So bear with us. First of all, we just discussed that Febreze example. I'm just going to do a couple of interesting examples, things to think about. But the underlying idea is, look, there's three things you do. You scale down, ramp up, or change your message. Yeah, when you're changing your message, your customer psychology is important. That's what we learned from that Febreze. So use this time to step back and really, really, really think through, because it's a major economic event. Now, I'm going to do one more interesting little example to really button that down. So this is just for you, Abby. Maybe you'll find it interesting. This is some case study. It was a major retailer. This was long ago. This is very, very early machine learning for results. This retailer did their research. You can look this up on the internet. They did their research and they discovered that there are 3 milestones in someone's life where they consider changing brands. Now, this is the really amazing thing, Abby, is we're pushing out all this advertising, commercials. Commercials online, right? Basically videos and all this different stuff we're doing. And most people, it's just in one ear out the other. There's these 3 milestones where people are truly likely to change brands. They are when someone gets married, when someone has their first child, and when someone buys their first home. And the rest of the time, it's you can get conversions, but it's way more expensive to convert people who aren't in these life cycle stages. And I'll just argue, again, wrapping all this up for the audience, that those are standard milestones, but other things can happen where there are other milestones. There must be. For instance, when the way the entire global economy works changes, right? And this moment right now could be a moment when you are able to speak differently to your audience and get them to change brands. So I'll just close off with this example. This is live. This major retailer discovered this. And they started trying to find, through their loyalty program, and they gave out flyers. This is pretty old school. They tried to figure out when all these milestones were happening, including when women were pregnant. And this is a true story. There was this household that had, a young lady in the household, and the house started getting flyers addressed to her that had diapers and. Because this is how the machine learning works. If someone purchases this and this in a 2-week period, there's a 94% chance that it's a pregnant woman, right? That's just kind of how the machine learning works. So they figured it out and they started marketing to her as a pregnant woman. And the father, because this was a young lady, the father contacts the retailer and says, "What are you doing? Trying to get my daughter pregnant?" And it turned out she was pregnant, and the retailer knew before the family. That's, very early, very, very, very early machine learning. So go look that up and understand that a retailer this large did all this work because they knew there are specific times. Now let's wrap this whole thing up. Thanks for everybody for listening to these interesting little tidbits. There are specific times when people will change brands. And outside of those times, it is an uphill battle. And here we are. This may be one of those times. And we discussed Febreze. Consumer psychology is key to this. So, what do you think about all that?
I think it makes sense. Like on Meta, I was looking at some of the brands that I have access to today, and I saw improved ROAS and amount of new customer purchases for strictly new customers. So you can segment out by new, engaged, and existing customers now, especially because with like Advantage Plus, it becomes a little bit murky. So Meta does that for you a little easier now, which is nice. And yeah, it's cool to see, like, because I thought maybe like the panic shoppers were panic shoppers that are trying to avoid price increases. That's what I mean when I say that. I thought that they were people that would be like engaged already or brand familiar. We're actually seeing some people like come in like purely from top of funnel and converting easier and more cheaper, which is nice. So yeah, I think that makes sense. And the other thing that I would note is like, I might have said this earlier at like a surface level, but like if you're a Canadian brand, for example, lean into like that patriotic element and just put it where you can, because we're seeing messaging like that really stand out for Canadian brands in particular. They want to support like other like local Canadian businesses. And then on the US, on the flip side, really lean into like your founder's angle and like who you are as a brand. Because even if you do get your product from overseas, there's been some cool things that I discovered about the brands that I work with where, you know, like they know the factory they work with in China, how it's like a whole family business where like the aunts and uncles like all work together, and it's very wholesome and like sweet to like learn about like how they sourced an ethical factory and everything. And that's the messaging that like we can so quickly skim past, especially when we're thinking of like conversion. But like this is the time where you should really like pull on the heartstrings and do that storytelling properly about who you are as a business and how if these tariffs are going to impact you, you should talk about it and like be upfront with your audience.
Yeah. And again, because if this is an event where people are actually considering, like consideration, if this is an event where people are actually paying more attention, now's the time, that you're going to, rather than just ambulance chasing other people, other brands, you can become that central brand. So that's interesting. Also, it sounds like you just said there that, you're actually seeing low-cost customers, which could maybe even reinforce the kind of hypothesis that this is a time when people are open to new brands, right?
It reminds me of like the lipstick correlation to when the economy crashes. Have you heard of that?
No, no.
Oh, like lipstick sales go up when there's a recession.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's people treating themselves to like smaller luxuries. Where like maybe they can't afford a new car right now, but those small treats that make them feel better about themselves and their appearance in like an economic downturn. I was talking to a jewelry brand about that Wednesday where they were like, whoa, we never considered that like this might be our time. Like people might actually want to like treat themselves to something that's like of a smaller AOV because it's been a crappy week for them. So
One more point here on the changing the message. I just was curious, is stock up the right message right now?
it depends. It depends on like who you are as a business and how much inventory you have on a boat or in the country. I spent like a good hour of my day today going through inventory with a client where they mapped out what does 6 months look like, what does 12 months look like for certain products, because they were thinking we can focus on getting efficient with our ad spend, but selling less of certain things and still bringing in just as much profit. And they were like, we would rather do that and prioritize like the longevity of the inventory that we don't have to pay over 100% of a tariff on, than going the stock up route, like stock up before there's a price increase and then having to deal with that tariff. They were like, instead, let's pull back on spend. Let's get efficient. We'll target less units sold. And in the meantime, we can start thinking about where else can we manufacture product, like do a lot of that heavy lifting that is really hard to like perfect within a week because it's been a crazy week. And I honestly thought that was a great strategy. So that's working for them. But if you're an like American business, you're manufactured in the US, and this is like a gold mine week for you essentially. Like I would say go for it. Like it's not affecting you at all, and you can definitely lean into the stock up messaging, or just if it's not stock up because you know there isn't going to be a price increase, your messaging would just maybe not change, but you could go heavier into top of funnel and capitalize on the fact that intent is really high right now.
Different ways to be aggressive depending on your situation. Okay, so Thank you very much. That was the re-message. What are the three things that people are the retention kind of really high level does? You re-message, figure out what consumers are thinking now, or you ramp up or scale down. So I wanted to just go through these ones quickly. I mean, I discussed these a lot on my pod. The re-message was interesting, so I don't want to go into these two too much. Also, you've been very kind with your time. But let's discuss ramp up and scale down. Ramp up, again, it's not turning your email program into a spam machine. We are white hat. We follow all the rules, but just ramping up. So, look, I'd love to hear. You help all of our channels interact together to be greater than the sum of their parts. How does kind of ramping up, work and help a brand?
Yeah, like one thing I was thinking of before coming on was just how we interact on a day-to-day, and especially like if we're really trying to hit a revenue target in a month and we're looking a little over efficient with our spend and we're thinking like what levers can we pull? That's when we hit up our email team and we say like what campaigns do we have ready to go? Do we have anything that we have really high confidence in, unless of like a test for a new angle? Or is there like a text only founders angle that we can whip out in an hour that gives a little bit of an extra offer to people that we just need to push over the line for a great evening here? So ramping up would just look like, if intent is softer on certain days heading into next week or whatnot, just having a few extra campaigns or campaign ideas in the back of your mind and being able to use those as like a free and easy resource when Meta, for example, is looking down.
Yeah, and so this is leading somewhere a bit, which is like if someone's got three different agencies, that kind of stuff's not really happening. Not like send a quick Slack to Sarah, hey, can I just get something put together real quick? That's not happening. All the stuff that we just discussed, the problems we're solving, the cool things you're doing across channels, that's not happening if someone's got three different agencies. So,
or if it is, you are the messenger and that's an hour out of your day. Like that's just not fun.
yeah, good call. Well, but also you would need to see the gap in revenue. You would need to be reading like line by line everything that's going on with your brands and saying, I predict the week isn't going to be big enough, right? Get on the pipe with the other, like that's, so even if you tried, you would not achieve what you achieve everything under one house. And so, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Good. Yeah, that makes sense. Like we do certainly, our team, we ramp up when it's necessary, and you can just switch to, we do these big, beautiful works of art for messages, and you can just simplify those and turn it into more messages. And I'll just say to the audience out there, like, if you are going to start pushing out more messages right now, look, first of all, Glock Apps. Hey, I just interviewed the CEO of Glock Apps. It's like an hour-long discussion on inboxing. I bet you can't wait for that. So go check that out. The world's best email retention podcast has no relationship, financial or otherwise, with Glock Apps. I'm just trying to bring you guys the best I can because I have a thirst for customer retention. So you would want to use something like Glock Apps to know that you're inboxing well if you're going to start ramping up. Also, if you go back to episode 2, I think it is, we discuss basic metrics and just understanding, watching your open rate to make sure that you're still in the inbox. And then ultimately, you want to balance your frequency and your window, and like kind of just big rule of thumb. You have to test and optimize beyond this, but obviously like 120 days, 1 message a week, 90 days, 2 messages a week, 60 days, 3 messages a week, 30 days, 4 to 5 messages a week. But point being, if you're going to go and double how many emails you're spending, you'd better adjust your window, or you may be giving Gmail indigestion and then you end up in a bad place. So just some tips out there if anybody is thinking about ramping up their deployments. But of course, you could also have a dynamite team like Pilothouse do it for you. And the last thing here to close off this amazing hour-long episode is scaling down, where we really work on automating. I'll just say we are currently working internally to fortify the customer retention systems of our clients, feed in more low-cost revenue, someone hits the site, do not stop. Send messages, get them back on the site, get them back in their cart, get that conversion. And just, again, you heard the way that our team interacts together. Having us do that fortification, if the brand maybe has some other agency that's not really interacting with us, or maybe they did it themselves, they tried to figure it out, they did okay. We have these people who set up dozens of these, like Alexis that you met, set up dozens and dozens of these, and we just know how to do it right. So everybody, if you've gotten this far in this podcast episode, you are truly masochistic. Is that the word? But please go listen to another one. Go listen to the episode where we break down April flows, 50% off flow builds and more. It's not just flow builds. There's also some very interesting management options to use this time to consolidate and bring everything under one roof. And then you can focus on the other pressing matters in your business. So that said, Abby, just in closing, have you had any experience with our team, putting some flow builds up on a client of yours?
Yeah, I have. Pretty much, I recently onboarded a brand where we started with Meta. And if I could give a piece of advice is if you don't have a dialed retention program, start there before starting with Meta, because I think it's just wasted ad spend. We call it the leaky bucket. We think if you don't have your flows set up properly, there's money left on the table. And there's been quite a few times where a brand has come in. I've been really excited and we've done all the right things on Meta. We've seen growth in new customer acquisition, but we don't see a really strong returning customer rate. And then I start to dig in and I start to ask questions and see what's going on with their returning customer rate. And that's when I start finding holes. And when it comes to their email program, I sign up myself and I see flows that I'm familiar with from working with Jordan and the rest of his email team not pop up for me. And that's when we bring on retention. And in hindsight, I always just wish that we did that first, because it's just, to me, it's money that we missed out on in hindsight.
Yeah. And, let me use that opportunity. So look, the email team does CRO. We also have a CRO team that does the on-site, and together we kind of do the CRO. Email is also a branding tool further up the funnel, but that CRO part's important. And whenever I can in the sales process, I say to people, hey, let's set all this up first. Some people, they want the ads, right? Sometimes they think their email program is good enough. Maybe sometimes it is good enough, but other times it's not, right? A lot of the time it's not. Email is a weird channel. So look, great point. It's funny. Wow, sending a message directly to your customers works, right? Sending a message directly to customers for almost free is surprising at driving results. So, wow. Thank you for that gauntlet that we just went through, Abby. It was just wonderful chatting with you.
Yeah, it's been a while. I appreciate the opportunity to come on. And if you ever need me on again to talk anything meta ads, I'm happy to help, or just strategy.
In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.